Hey, this is David with Hagerty and Redline Rebuild Updates. Today, we are taking our 37 Ford race car over to get sandblasted. So I have it lifted up, set on the trailer, and we are ready to roll across town, and hopefully my old trusty steed here will get me there. So here we go. All right, hey, so we have our 37 Ford off to the sandblaster. I can't wait to see it cleaned up. It's gonna be cool. Hopefully there's a lot left. But in the meantime, I'm gonna get back on our Buick. We do have our pistons back in our new design. And so I'm gonna try and get all the rings set up and start putting the pistons in. But I've already went through and started with the timing. So this has a timing backer, if you will, against the block. And then the traditional, timing chain and gears. But what I did find that was very interesting, and I almost got burnt by it. Thankfully, I rechecked some things. In typical fashion, timing gears have a dot on them, both on the big one and the small one. And normally you would line those dots right here. And that would be at top dead center of number 1. That would be your placement of the timing. Now that's not firing number 1, that is just how you set them up. It's actually firing number 6 if you're working on a small block Chevy, as a for instance. Now, what I did, so I set it up initially that way because it's like, well, this is the way you do it. And I noticed that the number 1 piston was clear down in the hole. Now, I was like, oh, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So I did a little research, and lo and behold, it was 100% wrong. So you have to put the dots out in this area. So basically, I turned the crankshaft to the point where the stroke is all the way up, meaning it would be as high as the piston would be high up in the hole as it can be. And then you can see this chain, luckily, has 2 marks on it, 2 different keepers on this side. And you put the furthest one out into the crank groove and the furthest one the other direction on the gear of the cam groove. So that is technically a 12 tooth offset, or 11 depending on how you read it. And at the end of the day, this is the way it goes. It's completely different than anything I've worked on before. And I guess it just goes to show that if it doesn't make sense, probably a good idea to double check it. So that's what we did. Now on to our rings. So rings, we have a set of Hastings cast rings, nothing too glamorous. They're actually from a 4-cylinder design because this piston is so small in diameter. So we matched up rings first to our bore and then designed a piston relative to the ring design first off. So here's our stock piston. Now, I've done a couple things on this piston. I've lightened it up by shortening it, specifically in changing the ring package. So instead of a 4-ring package, I've gone to a more modern 3-ring package. And of course, I've drastically changed the look of this dome. Now, believe it or not, as obnoxiously huge as this dome is compared to our new one to lay on side by side, this is a 7.5 to 1 compression piston, and this is now going to be an 8.5 to 1 compression piston. Now, the reason for doing that is 8.5 to 1 takes advantage of pure 87 octane. So basically any fuel we can get, we'll push through it and it'll be great. No spark knock, no worry about running 93, all that type of thing, because this motor is going to be a runner. So at this point, I need to take each one of the rings, compression rings, set it down into the hole, typically somewhere around 1 inch down, measure the in gap. So as you go in, your rings compress and you'll check that in gap. And then I have to file them to fit so I get the correct in gap. Now, On this particular motor, I'm going to use 4 thousandths per inch on the top and 4.5 on the bottom, or the second ring. So that's going to be 15 and 19 as far as the end gaps are concerned. Now my normal ring positioner, if you will, because you want to set these down in and you want them square. So this tool would normally go down in here and square things up. But given the fact that these bores are so small, this is not going to work. So I'm going to improvise and actually use the brand new pistons. It has a good amount of flat surface that will be square. And I'm going to cheat here. I'm going to use my wrist pins as my stopper. So now take your ring, pull it together to get it down into the bore started, like such. Take your piston, carefully work it down in there because you don't want to gouge up your new piston. And then the wrist pins are actually stopping it and squaring it up into the hole. Pull back out and start checking. I need 15 thousandths, and I can visually see that that is not. We're closer to about 10. So I need to take roughly 5 thousandths off that ring, use the ring grinder for that, and basically go down all the holes and do the same thing both for the top ring and the second ring. The oil control rings, I will check them, but normally they are always quite large already, so it's not a big deal. And then at that point, we'll be ready to assemble the pistons and put them on the rods, put them down in the hole, and lock them down. So, fun begins. As we go here, it'll pick up steam and it'll be a little faster because it's a pretty tedious process. I mean, you're looking at the difference of a couple thousandths. So for instance, this particular ring in the number 6 hole really only needs about a half a thou off on the one side. So that's where things get into a real good feel, and you'll watch me, I'll go back and forth multiple times on ones that need to have more off, because I want to sneak up on that because I certainly don't want to go too far. So it's just a matter of setting it in here against this diamond wheel and taking a few rotations off. Now as I was saying, as I go, I kind of learn how many cranks gets how much off of it. So with that, let's see where she measures out at. So my 15 thousandths, and that little bit needs just a little bit more. So I'll take probably 3 or 4 more cranks off, and then this one will be fine. Now before I am done and able to move on to the next ring, I need to go through and chamfer this back on this very little edge all the way around. And then likewise on the side I have not filed, and what you're doing is removing that burr, because you don't want to have a burr like on this outer edge that's running up and down the piston bore, or a burr on the surfaces that go against the piston, because it'll want to catch on there and not spin. All our rings are file fit. They're ready to go onto the pistons. However, just like the crankshaft and the main caps, I need to go through and assemble the rods with the bearings in and check for clearance there. And then at that point, I can add the wrist pins and the pistons and then stuff them in the hole. So there we go. You can see we finally have some pistons. You can't even imagine how excited I am to get these here and moving forward. We're gonna get them assembled onto the rods and into the motor. All right, so our piston assemblies are all ready to go into the block. But you know what? I just got a phone call that our hot rod is ready to get picked up from the sandblasting. So unfortunately, I got to drop this project right now, run over there before the day is over, and there's some rain coming. So I got to go get the hot rod, get that race car back over here and get it back in the dry. And I want to see it. So there we go. As you can see, here's our sandblasted hot rod. It's back in the shop. And like always, you get a few surprises here and there, but that's not bad. It's nothing a little bit of elbow grease won't fix. So we're gonna get back after this hot rod. We still have that Buick to do. It's the end of the day. And you know, it's time to get to work. But what I want you to do first, go to the Hagerty shop and check this out. I want you to go pick up your new favorite hat. See ya.